like all of a sudden out of nowhere, this like the big dude comes in and goes, "Don't do what you're about to do," and I'm like, "No!" So I waved.
Welcome to a brand new podcast. Iain McLean is a writer and the author of TJ's War. David Blair is an actor and the narrator of the audiobook TJ's War. David and Iain have been listening to their readers and listeners and have decided to turn TJ's War into a movie. And since the story covers the entirety of World War II, the movie will cost at least $50 million. Will David and Iain succeed in their quest? Follow them in this podcast series. We're going to make a $50 million movie.
The next direction I wanted to go is I wanted to ask what was going on the Axis side of things. Do the Axis and Allied countries differ in their approach to Christmas and Christmas morale?
Well, this is the crazy thing about war. I mean, you look at what's going on in Ukraine right now, and Ukrainians and Russians are when they're fighting, they're talking to each other because they pretty much speak the same language. And with Germany and Britain especially, and America too, when we're at war, we're all fighting for the same God. You know? So the Germans celebrate Christmas just as much, or if indeed more so than we do. I mean, a lot of the carols that we sing in church at Christmas time are German carols.
Aren't Christmas trees isn't that a German thing?
I
might be making that one up.
No. It could be. It's a pagan
German.
thing. The Christmas
Queen
adopted,
Victoria.
it could be from Germany.
Queen Victoria brought it from Albert.
Oh, really?
Prince Albert. Yep. It's definitely a German pagan, I think, tradition. Yeah. And Queen Victoria brought it over because Prince Albert wanted some semblance of home, and she popularized it. She also popularized the white dress for wedding too. Really? Queen Victoria did all sorts of cool stuff.
In the the Inverness Museum, there is a tartan dress from 1785, which was a wedding dress, and it's the oldest tartan wedding dress that is in existence, I understand. And it was for the wedding of Malcolm Fraser to Elspeth McTavish, and they were my great grandparents.
Wow!
So before wedding dresses were white, they were other colors, and that was a tartan one. But the really interesting thing about that was that at the time, tartan was still banned by the government because of the rebellion of 1745, where the Highlanders, Bonnie Prince Charlie and so on, which is also mentioned in the book, came down. So the authorities, when they killed everyone at Culloden in 1746, they then said, no speaking Gaelic, no tartan dress, no kilts, get rid of all the culture. And funnily enough, it didn't really work for the Highlanders in Scotland, but when Germany lost the war the second time around in 1945, a strong part of the Marshall Plan, an American thing, was to stop the Germans from indulging in their history and their mythology and their culture. So all of the Siegfried is a big character in their mythology. So they were stopped from having any reference to the Wagner rings and their mythology, which is very similar to the Norwegian Norse mythology, because that was a key trigger that Hitler had used in creating fervor in the first place. So,
well, what can we learn from the resilience of the people during wartime Christmas? I mean, how can we become better people, knowing their stories and knowing what they went through?
Well, that's a good question. I think a lot of wars are based on religion, And I think events like Christmas during the war helps to reinforce the commitment people have to continuing the war.
Yeah.
Um,
I was going to propose earlier the opposite, that Christmas would make you realize, like, what the hell are we doing, guys? Like that sort of sentiment of, like, Christmas is this time of joy and
Peace and goodwill to all
sharing
men.
peace and goodwill, and let's just eat turkey and watch football.
Well,
uh
turkey's an American thing. I think goose is like
I'm
more common bird. But if I can,
yeah.
if I may interject, so there is a Christmas time story. So it not as famous as the 1914. You know, if you guys
The football
remember in
game, yes.
1914, the football
I
game,
don't
and we
remember, but I'm familiar with it. Yes.
well, okay, remember from reading it in school. How about that?
Yes.
So there is one story that's been documented by a gentleman out in Germany, where his house was literally right in the middle of the grounds of battle, and it turned out some three Americans showed up at his door, and the mom took them in. His mom took them in, and then so she's expecting more American soldiers to come in, so she left her door open, and then four German soldiers showed up, and they all kind of like had this weird standoff, and she's like, excuse me, this is my house, give me all your guns. She took all their guns, and then they all sat down to dinner. She made dinner for everybody, and so they had an enjoyable evening together, and the next morning shook hands and they parted ways. But that was like small truces, and I'm sure there was tons of those little stories that we just don't know about. But
Mhm.
you're right, Ian. Ultimately, I think, this is, if you have a common religion or at least common practice to find humanity again in the middle of war, to know that's fought by politicians and we're just, civilians following orders. It's really kind of humbling to know how much of these people sacrifice themselves, some not even knowing why,
Most.
right? They were so young.
Mm,
So I think Christmas time does bring back the humanity, at least even if it's just a small respite in the middle of a terrible war.
yeah. It completely. And to Mark, when Mark asked the question, what I'm really suggesting is that Christmas is a time to recharge the batteries before going back out. And as I keep saying in my profile and any chance I get, I do not understand war. I do not. I mean, we look at what's happened in Syria, what the tales that are coming out of Syria and the atrocities that have happened there. How can people do that to each other? It's, but it every year we have the same issues. And does Christmas help?
Well, it
Doesn't
it
seem to.
can and can't, right? I mean, depends on the religion that you are in, right? I think if you can find that EQ, I think to understand that all religions does serve a good purpose. Sure, the mechanisms of worship and the ideologies could be different. At its core root, though, is how to be a good human living in society. Ultimately, is how I feel religion is, and however you associate with it. Ultimately, I think the basic Ten Commandments is a human fundamental need, right? And, you know, little rules to try not to like screw up society, like, don't covet someone's partner, right? Like simple rules so you keep down the tensions in your
Mhm.
community. But yeah, don't murder other people. I think it's very basic. I think it's, you know, do unto others, be good to others so you can receive it. That's very basic tenets of humanity. And I think that's why World War II is our focus of topic. But Christmas time and the holidays, it is that one time that we listen to the music. So, fun fact on this is World War II started the emergence of more solemn Christmas type music. So, I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas, all those music staples that, at least here in the United States, we hear all the time now. And I prefer those musics. There's some sentimentality to it that kind of, even though it seems like a bummer, it's that longing. And when you're living your life, you're not always emotionally connected with one another. I think Christmas time is a wonderful way for us to remember that, hey, I haven't talked to, Iain in like 5 months. Let's
Mhm.
reconnect. Let's get back together again. So that's one thing I think that emerged out of World War II was that we got music to really continue that vibe from the war into now, 80 years later.
Yeah, the White Christmas was used in the film Holiday Inn, where Bing Crosby and can't think of the other guy sang that to the troops who were the American troops who were out in not sure which battle they would have been just about to enter. But they've flown out to sing this to the troops. So that's what Holiday Inn, the film, is about. So the very strong connection between the war and Christmas with that song.
Hey, as much as I love to like tease and celebrities, the war effort of celebrities going out to entertain the troops, I mean, that is so invaluable. To put themselves into harm's way, that is commendable. I mean, Bob Hope, I actually saw, I didn't get to meet him, but I was within 5 feet of him. And I got to tell you, it was like, it made my day. My friends were like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, that's freaking Bob Hope. The poor man was shuffling at that point. But I was like, oh my God, I want to say hi to him. The full disclosure, bodyguards are very good at doing their job, because apparently my body language of excitement to seeing Bob Hope, like all of a sudden out of nowhere, this like the big dude comes in and goes, don't do what you're about to do. And I'm like, no. So I waved. But so did out in England and in the UK, did you guys have celebrity performers going out to the troops as well? Did you guys have that program?
Lots of them.
Okay.
In fact, we actually had there was 2 major comedy series came out in the 70s. One was called Dad's Army, about the Home Guard, which is classic British comedy, very, very funny. And the other one was Windsor Davies. Don't you think it's Hot Mom? But anyway, it was about an entertainment troupe that went out to entertain the troops in the Far East. I wish I could remember what it was called, but celebrating the entertainers as they went out. Although in the case of that second one, they were army soldiers who had been put into an entertainment troupe. A lot of entertainers that we got after the Second World War had come into the entertainment business from doing that during the war. And some in prisons, we haven't discussed what prisons got up to, prisoner of war camps in Germany. One of their major events was Christmas, and keeping them going during the autumn and winter was preparing for the Christmas show. So a number of prisoners after the end of the war came back and went into the entertainment industry, because that's what they've been doing while being stuck in prison.
Fascinating
Mark,
stuff.
I know in Asia proper, I mean, there are some Christian nations out there. Did you in any of your research notice or see like any stories of how the troops fared in Asia during Christmas time?
Not really. Ian would probably be better equipped to answer that than I. You mean how the American troops that are, say, stationed in the Pacific Theater, how they celebrated Christmas, or I don't really have any direct knowledge.
And if you're listening to this and you know something about it, please write in. Please send us some stuff. It'd be very interesting to know. Unfortunately, because TJ didn't actually spend any time in the Far East, my research was all in Europe and America. So I'd like to know.
Well, I did a quick little search. Bleak is the word. There was not a lot of celebration.
That's what I would imagine.
It was, let's say, harsh conditions in POW camps for all the Allies, and minimal celebrations. Sometimes only a small shared meal. So.
Yeah, I mean, this is a topic for a different episode, a different time. But from my understanding, the prisoner of war in the European theater, it's a totally different experience than the prisoners of war in the Pacific, because not that it's a competition, but they were treated uh, with much less respect or in much harsher conditions in the Pacific arena.
Yeah.
I mean,
In Europe too, depending on which country you came from, there's a tremendous difference in the treatment of British and Americans compared to Poles or
mm,
um, Russians. Russians were hardly ever taken prisoner.
Yeah.
well, that's really interesting to think about that. I do know in Asia, the Japanese were not very gracious with the
Yeah.
POW, unfortunately.
Mm.
But the odd thing, and again, this is going into a topic for another time, but this is a totally different country now than it was, and I mean, almost like just pre and post war. It's sort of odd, that how can a country just like flip a switch? But I mean, the the post war, I don't want to say propaganda, but I forgot what it's called, but there was a some kind of media organization or whatever that as soon as World War II ended, I mean the machine was running, and everybody was like pro America. I mean it's weird how
Was it?
how
Was there something like the Marshall Plan in Germany? Did they have a? Did they sort of quash some of the Japanese ideas about their godlike king and or emperor, wasn't it? It's an
The
emperor.
well
emperor,
the emperor
right?
the emperor did there was this sort of admission the emperor is not a god, um and yeah, I don't know. There's it starts with a G. There's some sort of like I wish I knew organization that immediately after the end of World War II that basically uh, promoted a new era for Japan. And the thing about Japan, it is rooted in the people's in the fabric of the people to rebound from tragedy. And that could, I mean, throughout 2,000 years of history, it could be a tsunami, an earthquake, it could be war or whatever. They're just they feel it's a part of their culture to rebound, you know uh to uh to turn everything around after they've lost everything.
Yeah.
and and that's what they did after World War II. And so there wasn't this animosity towards the Americans who had just dropped 2 atomic bombs on them.
No kidding,
And I
right?
mean, how do you not have animosity towards you know uh a country against a country that did something like that? But yeah, I don't know. It's just it was a totally different country after World War II.
Well,
Very interesting.
during the Reconstruction period, so that was like there's a huge economic boon because we basically helped rebuild them. It wasn't the Marshall Plan, just to clarify. We didn't have anything like that for the Japanese, but we did send them massive amounts of food. They said what 16.5 million tons of food was sent over between 45 and 46, and we basically helped rebuild them. And that's
Mm.
why what helped accelerate the reconstruction of Japan as an economic power. And I remember this from school days is because we rebuilt them, everything was brand new. Their
Yeah.
infrastructure was modern, as opposed to where we were limping along. All of us, well, not Americans, but everywhere else, there was we have some of our older buildings that still remained, but they got to more or less start over. I mean, like it's
And they didn't have to after that spend any money on military because there was a complete renunciation of war.
yeah,
And in fact there's no technically there's no army here. It's a self-defense force just to defend the country. That's debatable. Um but for decades there was no military expenditures. So they're just spending all the money on the infrastructure and the economy. But anyway, we're off the topic of Christmas. Let's go.
Probably. I'm not. We can change the title of this podcast at any point. I I do think this thing when you were talking about the recovery of the Japanese, it is astonishing how they do this. I mean, when I saw the tsunami in 2010, and this wave, and we watched it live. Remember, we watched it live. These waves coming in, and you could not believe the destruction. All these vehicles, hundreds of vehicles, just getting carried along with the wave, and people just getting wiped out by the thousand. And yet, within 2 or 3 weeks, the Japanese, were back to. I know that there's a Japanese car company I'm connected to in this country, and the delay in getting stock through was minimal. A phenomenal ability to just recover from astonishing destruction.
I like there's very few people who are going to get this reference, and Ian, you're not going to be one of them. But I think Syya, because we're in the same generation and
We're all the
of
same
America.
generation. What are you talking
I know that,
about?
but I mean, we're from America anyway. I liken the Japanese to the doozers in Fraggle Rock. So if you know the show Fraggle Rock, the doozers are these like, the most of the show is about the Fraggles. The doozers are these like little blue, they're just builders. Like all they're doing is just build, and the Fraggles actually eat the buildings. Like they'll come along, they'll just like munch some of the buildings, and the doozers just don't care. They just keep on building, just keep on building. And in fact, there was an episode of Fraggle Rock where like the Fraggles said, "Hey, let's what are we doing? We're eating their buildings. Let's stop." And lo and behold, there just was like it was inundated with all this doozer. The doozers needed the Fraggles. I don't know where I'm going with all this. I'm just telling you, the Japanese people are like doozers.
Well, you're right. I have no idea what you're talking about.
I knew that you wouldn't. I knew you wouldn't. It's not a generational thing. It was like an American, like
It was American show.
You see, and I are like 1 year apart, and so we had pretty much the same childhood. Yeah. So I know she gets it, but anyway, Q, please cut this part out.
No, leave it all. Leave it all. Be naked.
But you are demonstrating something.
We've got to bring this to a close. But before we bring it to a close, we're right on the end of 2024, and I was speaking to David earlier, but you two guys have been so important to this progress that we've made over the last year, and I've gained an enormous amount of learning through this process of turning this book into a TV series. We thought it would be a film, but actually it's going to be a 20-part TV series. And not only have I gained a lot of learning, but I've gained you two people. And I can't tell you how wonderful that is. It is. I just love you guys to bits. And I'm so pleased to have had this time with you this year, and long may it continue. And I want you to have the most wonderful Christmas. And here's to having an even better 2025.
Well, here. And Syya knows how much I adore and love her. And Ian, I consider you one of my best friends. We had a heart-to-heart not too long ago. And so, I'm grateful for both of you as well.
I'm eternally grateful for meeting you guys. You remind me that there is a world out there, both of you two, plus David, plus Quinn. Gotta shout out
yes.
Quinn.
I'll talk to Quinn offline, but Quinn, we love you.
We love you, Quinn.
I love your beard, Quinn.
I want beard again. And Sincera with the voice. We love your voice, Sincera.
Yes. So, but these international conversations, right? We're having such a much more broader world perspective. And I feel like for me, for 2025, there's hope. I hope there's hope for the world to live in this same moment of peace that we're vibing right now with the holidays. Hopefully that can carry through. It is a contentious political world, at least in the United States. I don't even go there. But there is opportunity for us as normal humans to come together to have these great conversations. We're literally talking about World War II, which was a global war, and heaven forbid that should ever come to fruition in a World War III. So knowing you guys is such a great reminder that humans just want to live peacefully. We just want to love our families. We just want to enjoy our time on this little rock around the sun. and
True.
hopefully everyone else can agree with us.
True of
on that.
America, true of Britain, true of Germany, true of Russia, true of Ukraine, true of Syria, true of Israel, true of Gaza. What the hell are people doing killing each other, right? Madness.
100%. So
read the book. See if you can work it out.
I think we can't top that last statement, sir.
That's good. I think you just cut it right there.
Okay. To you listening, thank you very much. I'm watching. Thank you very much for this year, and we all wish you a very Merry Christmas and a wonderful 2025.
Merry Christmas.
To find out more about the book, visit tjswar.com, and to buy it, click on the Amazon link below. To accompany us on our journey, please subscribe to this podcast because we're going to make a $50 million movie.